welcome to the General Laws Committee. Some people will be happy with this and some people will be unhappy. But we're going to knock out the ones that are uncontested before we get into ones that are contested. Please do the roll call.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. These four bills are identical to Senate bills 62 by Fowler, 527 by James, 574 by Hodges, and 823 by Knight. 527 is going to be required to go to the Finance Committee, so I'll take that one out of the block. So make a motion.
So moved.
Proper. Okay. Likewise, 153. What, amigo? What's the difference? What's the? No, let's just do them separate. Okay. So we have a motion to pass and re-refer to Finance number 527. Any discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. All right.
We got to take 1041 by for the day.
Okay. All right, remind me at the right time. Okay, you didn't, 9-0, that one is referred to Finance. Number 62, 574, and 823, is there a motion on those to pass in a block?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. That one is reported. Those three are reported 9-0. The next ones are similar to Senate bills. And Amigo, would you tell us the difference between 153 and Senate Bill 177?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For House Bill 153, the difference is that the total number of graves decreased from 6,000 to 4,050. And there's also the Senate Finance Committee put the clause on the bill. So okay. Those are the two changes or the two differences.
All right. Is there a motion to conform 153 to the Senate Bill 177? Moved and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on that? The motion would be to pass and re-refer to Finance. 153. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All right. Record your votes. All right. That one is 11-0. Okay. The next one is number 855, which is similar to Senator Locke's 197. Amigo, what's the difference?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is language that is in two places, and I think that it's my understanding that it's the agreement of all the interested parties. The Senate Bill 197 has been conformed to the House bill. The language difference is on page 1, line 32, and at page 2, line 92. That's the only change, and no amendments are needed, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Locke, are you satisfied? Okay. Then the motion would be to report number 855.
Move to report.
Properly moved and seconded. House Bill 855 be reported. Okay. The next one is House Bill 862, which is similar to Senate Bill 758. Amigo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The differences are that the definition for collective team name has been removed, and there's some changes in the definition of real estate team. Again, it's my understanding that this is the language, or the House bill contains the language that all the interested parties agree in, so no changes are needed.
Okay. Is there a motion to report 862?
Move to report.
Any input on that? Anybody opposed? All in favor say aye or record your votes. Okay, that one is reported 13-0. All right, the next one is number 1506, Delegate Bell. It's similar to Senator Chafin's 979. Amigo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are two technical differences. They're on lines 17 and 19. The House bill specifies secondary mortgage market, which is the language, the way that it should be. I think I was the person that drafted the original one, so I can tell you that I left out mortgage. So there are no changes needed for the House bill.
Is anybody here in opposition to House Bill 1506? Hearing none. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1506 be reported. Record your votes. That one is reported 13-0. All right, the next one is House Bill 1554. Pillions is similar to Senate Bill 906 of McClellan. Is there, Amigo, what's the difference?
There is a technical difference. A tense is changed on line 128, changed from passes to passed, and that's the correct version, so there are no changes needed.
All right. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to House Bill 1554? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Move your report.
Properly moved and seconded. Record your votes. That one is reported 14-0. Okay. The next bill, House Bill 48, charitable solicitations, is Delegate Chrissy here?
This HB 48, Mr. Chairman, requires that a charitable organization's annual registration statement will include a statement indicating the amount of funds expended during the preceding fiscal year to pay for the administrative expenses of the charitable organization, and it also does a computation so that there's a percentage of the total expenses of the charitable organization. It also, in addition, it specifies that that statement will also include the amount of funds expended providing charitable services and a computation of those expenses. So what it does is it makes it more robust, the transparency and accountability of the annual report.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? Is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 48 be reported. Record your votes. That one passes 14-0. All right. Delegate Cole, 146, National Guard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. House Bill 146, I think, just corrects an oversight in the current code as far as National Guard employment protections. It expands the protection for a National Guard member who works in Virginia but lives in another state, and so and this was requested by the Department of Defense.
Is anyone here in opposition?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 146 be reported. Record your votes. And that one is reported 14-0. The next one is pawnbrokers, Delegate Bell, 206.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, pawnbrokers must create a digital image of all forms of identification and retain that as part of the pawn shop's records. That means if the only identification is a military ID, that they would be required to take a digital photo of that, and we can't do that. That's against federal law. So this bill says that if that's the only form of ID available, they must take a digital image of the person themselves.
Okay. Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 206? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask just a brief question?
Sure.
I think the bill sounds fine, but I'm wondering, doesn't a member of the military already have a photo ID, or you want them to have an extra ID?
No, they have a photo ID, but the pawnbroker has to make a digital image of whatever ID is presented and we can't do that. We can't take a picture of a military ID.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, that completes your questions? All right, I think we had a motion.
Second.
All right, record your votes. That one is reported 14-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next one is House Bill 228, Coal Public Records Act.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this bill is, I think, really, hopefully is just clarifying. It just says that any records that are required to be kept may be kept in electronic format. It does exclude any, court records such as evidence and things like that. Some of our local clerks have been, are operating under the understanding that they still have to maintain things like board minutes and paper records, and I just want to clarify that you can keep electronic copies as long as it meets all the FOIA and transparency requirements.
Okay.
It's made available.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 228? Seeing none.
Move to report.
All right. Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 228 be reported. Record your votes. That one is reported 14-0. Is Delegate Kilgore not here? Delegate McQuinn? Welcome. House Bill 284.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 284, this bill expands the list of qualified organizations who are eligible to receive funds for the preservation of African-American cemeteries and graves. It allows any locality or person who owns an African-American cemetery and also allow localities to hold funds on the behalf of charitable organization. This bill also requires the owner of the African-American cemetery to allow reasonable access for maintenance and care for the cemetery.
Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 284? Seeing none, the motion would be to pass and re-refer to finance so that it's in the same posture with the other grave. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. Okay. That one is reported 14-0.
Thank you, Mr.
The
Chairman.
next one is House Bill 297, Boulevard. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 297 brings some transparency to the process that our state agencies adopt guidance documents. And so I think, as you all know, we have a pretty rigorous public input process for regulations, but the only thing we have right now for guidance is that they have to be posted to the Virginia Regulatory Town Hall website after they've actually been adopted by the state agency. And so anybody who works in a regulated area or has a business that is subject to regulations realizes that oftentimes it's the guidance that is the most impactful part of the regulatory process. The bill is actually very much streamlined from its original introduced version. AG's office provided some really good feedback. The nice folks from the Regulatory Town Hall gave some good feedback. And so what it does in its current form, it just simply requires that an agency provide 30 days notice that there is a public comment period, and there would be a link on the Regulatory Town Hall website. They would also be required to provide a notice out to their stakeholders that there would be an opportunity to comment. That shouldn't require any additional effort because those agencies are already required to have that list under the APA. And then the final one is that it provides a relief valve. So once those guidance documents have been adopted, if somebody says, hey, you know what, these really feel more like regulations. Right now, there's no way for anybody to challenge that, and it's a real gray area between regulations versus guidance, and it simply provides a mechanism to take a look at that. I will go into more detail about how this came to my attention if you'd like.
Let's see if there's any opposition first.
Yeah. But I will go ahead and say the Chamber of Commerce and the
Is
Contractors
there any opposition? I
Association.
don't think Chambers will come oppose it.
I'll move aside then.
All right. Is there any opposition? Anybody to speak against House Bill 297? And re-refer to finance. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. That one is reported 15-0.
Marvelous. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Toscano, Graves. This is very similar to a Senate bill, and the requirement is going to go to finance. So if anybody wants to go ahead and make a motion, if he's not here. 360. All right, the motion is to report and re-refer to finance. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye, or record your votes. All right, House Bill 523, Lindsay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 523 is an administration bill, the whole purpose of it being to comport the composition of the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations as it relates to architects and surveyors and engineers to make it in keeping with all other DPOR committees. The situation with this one being that the composition of this particular board started in 1920, didn't have laypersons, needs laypersons as a part of the board so that it cannot be attacked as possibly being a situation where we couldn't use sovereign immunity because of antitrust infractions being claimed.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 523?
Will we refer to finance?
This one does not require, good rhythm, but that one doesn't. Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 523 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one is reported 15-0. The next one is House Bill 533. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What House Bill 533 does is essentially, after the amendments, is it just requires the department to take steps to ensure that our veterans that are transitioning out of the military are fully aware of the various benefits that are available to them within the Commonwealth of Virginia, specifically with respect to how their military training and education transfers over within our own organic certification processes, et cetera.
You said amendments. Were those amendments put on in the House?
In the House.
Okay.
That's correct.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 533? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 533 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one passes 15-0. House Bill 543.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What this does is essentially instructs the Department of General Services can lease charitable or lease property to charitable organizations that are 501c3s for their specific purpose of addiction recovery at cost, provided that it is the use is deemed appropriate.
Okay. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 543?
Move to report.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 543 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Report your votes. Record your votes. That one passes 15-0. The next one is House Bill 555.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What 555 does is ensure that hair braiding will not fall under the licensing of cosmetology within the Commonwealth of Virginia. My daughter was very, very passionate about this, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 555?
Move to report.
Properly moved and seconded. The bill be reported.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes.
That's just jealousy right there, too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The bill is reported 15-0. House Bill 729 hid. Oh.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. We've got House Bill 729, which just instructs the Virginia Services or Fire Services Board to create modular training for volunteer firemen and to have part of that online. And they had the money inside their fund already, so there was no general fund impact on this. And
That is your opinion, but finance wants to see it.
I understand.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 729? Hearing none. Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay. Hey, see how we do that? Hearing for any further discussion, hearing none, record your vote. Okay. Senator Delegate Kilgore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, I was over in Commerce and Labor. House Bill 237, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And that's an agency bill from the State Corporation Commission dealing with extending the date by which the State Corporation Commission and the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity are required to compete their aspects of their one-stop small business permitting program. It continues it from June 30th, 2018 to January 1, 2020. So that's basically what it does. It deletes some requirements for biennial progress reports. That's the bill.
All right. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 237?
Mr. Chairman, a question for the patron. Why aren't they ready to go on this thing?
Well, from talking to Sam Nixon down there, it's just a lot more to it than they initially thought. But they think they'll get it done by 2019. But this is just a safeguard to do the 2020, Senator Reeves.
Okay, thank you.
Question. Yeah. Is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 237 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. And that one passes 14-01.
Thank you.
The next one is
That's right, I abstained.
790. Delegate Kim.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you. 790 is similar to what you just heard about the hair braiding. It's another hair products deregulatory bill, and I wanted to suggest something if your members are inclined.
We're probably not.
we had no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had no opposition to the bill coming out of the House. The only question that was raised, and we're trying to be proactive about, maybe we might want to try to address this, is the bill basically does three things. It would deregulate barbershops, workers who only do blow drying or the styling of the hair. And then it would also take out the word shampoo so that we don't have to regulate shampoo as a government. But the piece that was brought up as just a question is the question of the word styling. It's actually not in the code now. We're using the word styling in the context of trying to describe arranging, dressing, and curling, which is in the code. So if you want to add some more clarity, one suggestion I had was instead of using the word styling in the code, that we exempt, maybe we can just use the language that's already in the code. But it's up to you. If you want to do that, I'd be happy to walk you through it, some of the members. If not, happy to let it just go to the governor's office.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 790?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McBride.
This generated some interesting emails on shampoo. How are you resolving the overwhelming or negative response received from, I think, a lot of people in this committee's districts over shampoo products?
Mr. Chair,
and the concern over the health. Senator Mason has been just on me about the shampooing necessary and the health. Can you speak to some of those concerns?
Mr. Chair, I'd answer the gentleman by telling him that his seatmate may have to abstain on this bill, but that's another issue altogether. I think the issue here is that we have some jobs and products that have been just kind of accidentally put into the code without thinking twice. And as we think about this, they really don't belong in the code. We don't need any government regulation over this, especially with shampoo, because we're not talking about chemicals. We're not talking about anything that's of a health hazard. It's just purely a cosmetic work that we are getting done, just like blow drying is. But anyway, the only reason I brought up the possibility of language was because we did have some concerns raised by some folks about the word styling. Does it have any legal connotation? So in the spirit of trying to be more proactive, we suggested that. But if not, I'm happy to take the bill as is, sir.
Chairman? Is this a freedom bill?
Any bill can be named. Any bill you want to name it. Anything you want to. There is a motion that was properly seconded to report House Bill 790. No further discussion. Report your votes.
Follically challenged.
Mason, you don't want to abstain?
I suggest it.
Move.
Bad shampoo. Bad
The bill passes 13-2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
House Bill 859, Peace.
That's really a tough act to follow, Mr. Chairman. I have a very simple bill. Deals with mutual aid between localities. But you said I could title any bill however I wanted to, so it's a simple one. But it deals with mutual aid and the ability of localities to work with one another in support of their local building departments for technical assistance with administration and enforcement of the building code. No opposition in the House, no amendments, no opposition.
Is any opposition developed for House Bill 859? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 859 be reported. Record your votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee.
That one is reported 15-0. Byron, House Bill 1006.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. House Bill 1006 deals with workforce. As you know, being on the Workforce Board and Senator DeSteph as well, that one of the areas that we've been committed to along with the General Assembly is creating a demand-driven system based on occupational data. And one of the issues we've had is having access to that readily and in the form that we need it. So what this bill does, in a compromise worked out with VEC and the Chief Workforce Advisor and myself, was that a dashboard will be created to allow VEC to maintain the integrity of their system and allow the board and the public to access the important data that we need in order to get our work done. It'll provide efficiency in a transparent manner, and I hope it'd be the pleasure of you to pass the bill.
Okay, is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1006? Here. Properly moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, record your votes. That one passes 15-0.
Thank you.
The next one is 1031, Watts. Okay, Ingram, 1163.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 1163. This bill was requested by the Colonial Heights Fire Department. Currently, the code allows Arlington County Fire Department and only Arlington to require applicants for employment to undergo a fingerprint-based criminal history background check through the Criminal Records Exchange and the FBI. The Colonial Heights Fire Department, I imagine others would like the ability to run this sort of background check. Firefighters and first responders are often entering people's homes, dealing with sensitive and personal situations. It is important for fire departments to be able to know an applicant's criminal records before offering him or her employment. This practice is already taking place in Arlington, and this bill would simply allow other fire departments to utilize the same practice. That's all it does.
Thank you. Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1163? Hearing none, is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1163 be reported. Record your votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members.
15-0. Thank you. All right, 1170, LaRock, Delegate LaRock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As written and amended in the House, this bill would allow volunteer firefighting companies and volunteer EMS to use state negotiated fuel contracts for vehicles and equipment owned and operated by the volunteer fire companies. This was existing practice until I think an audit revealed some technical incompatibility issue there. We've, in the amendment that was presented as a substitute in the House, we incorporated wording that was provided by the DGS, and there's no cost to the state. Again, existing practice. Local company, in one of the companies in the district I serve, said this will save them about $2,000 a year by having access to this contract.
Okay. Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1170?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1170 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one is 15-0.
Thank you for passing this common sense, transparent freedom bill. Thank you, sir.
Let's go back up to House Bill 1031. Watts. Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If I may, I do have a handout that I think will help explain the situation. This bill has 1031 has had a 3-year history in the House, and there we have worked it out, and I think you'll find the supporters of the bill believe that this has become a win-win situation. But what I have passed out, if you'll look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that the fees that are charged for providing the disclosure packet at time of sale, if you are a professionally managed CIC, they are not only significantly higher, but they are increased every 5 years by cost of living. And they also cover items that if you provide the same packet and you are a self-managed, you don't get those. So if you flip the page, when we started this 3 years ago, the assumption was that all self-managed were just a leftover cul-de-sac someplace, leftover street. But in fact, as you see, there are a number of self-managed that are fairly significant size and may be a fairly significant complex situation that needs to be in the disclosure packet. So the complexity was not whether or not you're self or professionally managed. Where we moved from that then was in my dialogue with the realtors, their real concern was they would love to move to more electronic filing of this. So that is the bill that is there before you today. If a self-managed CIC complies with the disclosure packet by filing electronically, then they would receive the same fee structure that the professionally managed do, and they would also, however, be paid at point of settlement, which was another issue with the realtors, rather than having to pay immediately upon receiving the packet. There is one other aspect I would point out, however, in looking at what was allowable to self-manage, I realized that, in fact, since there were so limited number of fees that you could charge, you will also see that the language has been added as a new subsection B starting on line 235, which says, at the option of the seller and with the consent of the association, you can charge fees for expediting the inspection and production of the package, hand delivering it, or an additional hard copy. If you didn't have that language in, a self-managed corporate CIC could say, well, we just won't produce it. And by having that mutual agreement, it allows the self-managed to charge fees in those mutually agreed upon areas that they currently do not have the authority to charge any fee in.
Okay, thank you. Is there any opposition to House Bill 1031? Hearing none, is there a motion? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1031 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one is reported. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's, Thomas, 1221, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1221 would require the CIO of the Commonwealth to conduct annual comprehensive reviews of cybersecurity policies on every executive branch agency. Their focus would be on breaches in information technology that occurred in a reviewable year and any steps taken by agencies to strengthen our cybersecurity measures. Currently, only agencies that sign up for the Information Security Officer service offered by VITA are reviewed. This bill would have VITA and the CIO review all executive agencies. I met with VITA, and they said that it would be additional staff time, but they could do it within their existing budget. And the engrossed version of the bill also said that they should not include any information that would further cause vulnerabilities in their report. That's the bill you have before you, and I hope the committee will have a favorable outcome.
Is there anyone here in opposition to 1221, House Bill 1221? Hearing none, the proper motion would be to report and re-refer to finance to double-check the costs. Okay, properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, record your votes. Who's got Jules? That bill is reported 15-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. House Bill 1527, Heretic. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members, HB 1527 would simply extend to the 2,200 or so citizens of the Commonwealth who volunteer for the Civil Air Patrol the same basic employment protections as those already enjoyed by members of the Virginia National Guard and the Virginia Defense Force. Basically, in short, 25 words or less, what this does is provide employment protections for CAP members who do up to 10 days a year in training and up to 30 days a year pursuant to orders. In support, Mr. Chairman, we do have Colonel Dean Gould, who is the commander of the Virginia Wing of the Civil Air Patrol. As the committee knows, has cleared the House, I think, on a clean vote all the way up. And we would invite, at least hope for, the Senate's favorable approval of this particular bill.
All right.
Colonel Gould.
Unless you really want to speak, I want to ask for opposition first. Seeing none.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. I save you some breath. Any further discussion? Record your votes. Thank you for being here, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senators.
Okay. Fowler, number 63.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, House Bill 63 is back before you this year courtesy of a reenactment clause. The bill was brought to me by the Department of Criminal Justice Services and basically does two things. It repeals the current minimum requirements for a compliance agent. In many cases, Mr. Chairman, small companies registered as private security services. This requirement created a barrier to entry and are no longer required. The second part of the bill, currently these folks have to get either a surety bond or an insurance policy. This bill eliminates the surety bond in favor of the liability policy with limits set forth by DCGS. Mr. Chairman, again, is supported by the Private Security Association. I have Mr. Leon Baker from DCGS here if anybody has any questions. But
is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 63? Properly moved and seconded, the bill be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one passes 15-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members
All right. House Bill 459, Delacorn. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 459, you all were kind enough to hear from some of my stakeholders with regard to designating the state salamander. And I appreciate your time, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. And they are here today. If I can indulge me just to have them stand up, if that's okay with the
Please, rise.
Chair. These fabulous constituents and young activists actually came to me about a year and a half ago and wanted to designate a state salamander. They did a lot of research, contacted DGIF and many other organizations and groups, did their research, and it's just been inspiring to see them actually participate in the process and civic engagement. Hope it'll be the will of this body to pass the bill.
Senator Black.
Mr. Chairman, I'm really pleased to have the salamander people here. Some of you may recall I was very upset as a one-man herpetology caucus when we had the garter snake become the state snake of Virginia. This time we have chosen the red salamander, and I have a photo which I will just flash to the members of the committee, and everyone must admit that the red salamander is cute as a button. And we had wonderful children who came and they promoted the red salamander, and I think it is a delightful selection. I think it's worthy of the state, and I think the bill should pass.
I want to correct you on a couple of things. One, that does not look red, it looks coral. And two, you call them children, I think they're young adults.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank y'all for your presentation
Mr. Chairman,
last week.
should I make a motion?
You may make a motion.
I want to move it be reported, but I did want to say not only do I have a picture, I don't have a picture, but I have an artist rendering from the salamander savers, which is displayed prominently in the office. So I hope we'll adopt the bill so I can keep it up there.
And Mr. Chairman,
Wait, just.
And Mr. Chairman, I was not referring, when I said children, I was not referring to any of the young adults here, but we had a group of children who did come to an earlier session, and they made their presentation. One of them, there was a delightful little girl who had to come around because she wasn't tall enough to be seen over the podium. So those were the ones that I was referring to, and my apologies if there was any misunderstanding.
Just my fun. The properly moved and seconded House Bill 459 be reported. Any further discussion? Record your votes. The bill is reported 14-1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senator Sutherland, do you know where they're from? Do you know where they hail from? Burke. 41st District, that's right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members.
All right, next bill is House Bill 857. Peace.
I keep coming up, Mr. Chairman, after these fun bills, so slowing the train down a bit. House Bill 857. Mr. Chairman, I don't believe that there was a Senate version, but this bill is the omnibus landlord-tenant bill, which I know your committee members are well familiar with. The great thing that I can report hearing the groans of Senator Reeves is that I believe this brings us to the end of our legislative process, but for one act next year, where one of the goals of the Code Commission is to have the one residential landlord-tenant act under current law, two residential landlord-tenant acts, the Virginia Residential Landlord-Tenant Act and the residential provisions of the Virginia Landlord-Tenant Act. So this bill is to eliminate the remaining substantive difference between the two acts.
Okay.
It's a historic moment, Mr. Chairman. I know, as I testified in the House, Mr. Dix has been waiting for this day nearly all his adult life, and here we are.
Okay. Is anyone here in opposition to House Bill 857? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 857 be reported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That one is reported 15-0. Okay. Next one is Delegate Wiebert, House Bill 1609.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry to keep you waiting, but I anticipated more discussion on yours than some of the others.
I have a feeling your assumption would be correct. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm here today, and I have some folks with me, Debbie Easter, President of the Virginia Equine Alliance, Jeb Hannum, the Executive Director of the Alliance, to speak in favor of 1609. Before I start, I also would like to note that we are joined by a number of members from the New Kent County Boards, folks from New Kent County. Delegate Pease is also in support of this legislation. This bill would mean a lot for Virginia. It would also mean a lot for my district. I come from the heart of the Virginia horse racing industry in Fauquier County. As most of you know, Virginia's thoroughbred flat racing venue, Colonial Downs, held its last race in 2013 and closed for good in 2014. The ramifications of this have been far-reaching. The good news is we have a means by which we can reopen Colonial Downs and get our horse industry back on its feet, all while creating good-paying jobs for our residents, producing tax revenue for our Commonwealth, and generating hundreds of millions of dollars in economic activity. It is historical horse racing. HB 1609, as written, would allow adult Virginians to wager on races that have already been run. They won't know the race, the dates, or the winners. They can see odds and place their wagers. And that revenue would enable Colonial Downs to be viable again and bring back the horse racing industry within our borders. This activity would also be regulated by the Virginia Racing Commission. Recently, Tremere Economics and Analytics studied the historical racing and what it would mean for the Commonwealth. They project once it's fully up and running, that it would create over 1,400 new jobs, have an annual economic impact of $349 million, and generate $41.6 million in annual state and local tax revenue. That's real money for schools, roads, and public safety. We know that every year Virginians are traveling to Maryland and West Virginia, Delaware and Kentucky and Pennsylvania to enjoy horse racing. And they're taking their money with them. Not only are we losing out on that revenue, but the lack of racing here is also devastating our horse racing industry. An industry that is more than just a living for those who work in it. It's a way of life. It's a culture. This legislation is our opportunity to reverse this decline and make Virginia's horse racing industry competitive again, to the benefit of our entire Commonwealth. And speaking from a personal point of view, I farm for a living. We farm 2,400 acres. We make hay for the horse industry. We grow grains that go to our local co-ops that is used for horse feed. I know a number of trainers. I actually have a landlord who is a trainer who travels to Maryland and travels to Kentucky because the means of which by making a living are very scarce here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So this particular piece of legislation would benefit my district as well as New Kent County and many of the constituents of which I represent. And I'll leave that there, Mr. Chairman, and we'll have the discussion.
All right, I'm going to ask one question on this historic racing.
Yes, sir.
Do the odds that are used the same odds that they had at the track when they originally ran?
If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring an expert up to answer that question.
Whoever would like to. Welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Jeb Hannum. I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Equine Alliance. I have a statement. Would you like me to speak or address questions of the
Just
committee?
answer that question first, and then we'll go from there.
Right. So the unique thing about historical horse racing is it's a pari-mutuel wager. As the delegate stated, it gives the person the opportunity to review the odds of the horse, review the jockeys' standings, and other matters of the race that was conducted previously. So as a pari-mutuel wager, those wagers, the odds change based on the amount of monies that are bet on that particular race.
Okay. All right. The way I generally do this is I let the opposition have the first crack at it, so we don't waste time if there is no opposition. So I'll let you come back up in a minute.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1609? Not a problem.
Eddie Ailiff, Virginia Assembly of Independent Baptists. Now, you folks have been here a while, have seen this in another form. Senator Norman would bring this bill and has brought this bill many, many times. We are not doing anything special for the track other than bringing in a special type of gambling, which we oppose. You asked a good question. I don't know whether he really answered the question, but it seems to me that you're just trying to see if somebody can guess whether a race is going to be good. It's just basically a slot guess like a slot machine. So we opposed any type of expansion. This track has any opportunity to be bought by anyone that's interested to run horse races as was determined by the Commonwealth in 1988. Why it failed, I have no idea. But to me, if the horse industry in Virginia felt so compelled that this track needed to open, why couldn't they form a consortium, buy the track and open it, and run races and do betting on the races, live races, as has been approved by the Commonwealth? I oppose this. Please do not expand gambling in Virginia in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Janis speaking for the Family Foundation in opposition to the bill. I'll get to the direct question that you asked in a minute, Mr. Chairman, but the patron sort of laid out the premise of this bill and the purpose of this bill, and the supporters of the bill have basically told you, they've been around to see you, they've given you materials, and then what they've said is that we need to reopen the track in New Kent so that we can create jobs in New Kent County. You heard it today, 1,400 jobs in New Kent County, annual revenue of $349 million, and that $41.6 million of that revenue would come to the Commonwealth of Virginia or to the localities. But it comes with a string attached. In order to open that racetrack, you're being asked to do something, to authorize something called historic horse racing, which the previous witness described as a kind of pari-mutuel horse racing or betting. it's not pari-mutuel. What the mechanics of this legislation does is it defines historic horse racing as a type of pari-mutuel betting. But it's important for the members of this committee to remember what pari-mutuel betting is. Pari-mutuel betting, which is already authorized on horses in the Commonwealth of Virginia, is a form of betting whereby individual patrons will lay down a wager on a horse race. And they know the number of horses in the race, they know the names of the horses, they know those horses, the informed bettor, the informed patron is going to research the previous track history of that horse and the jockey. They're going to know the distance of the race, the number of furlongs. They're going to know the weather conditions at the racetrack, and they're all going to bet on the same race at the same time. In pari-mutuel betting, what makes it mutual is that the individual patrons are not betting against the house, they're not betting against the racetrack, they're not betting against the casino, they're betting against each other. The way they bet is they place bets on individual horses to win, place, or show, and then there's a handicapping process whereby the odds for each one of these horses are determined at the time the closing of the bets are closed, and then those odds are then attached to the race. The horses run the race, and then the prize money that's been collected after the house takes its house take off the top, including whatever's due to the county of New Kent or to the locality where the off-track betting facility is located, or to the Commonwealth, then that prize is allocated out amongst the patrons that have bet on that race. That's what pari-mutuel betting is. You're betting against the other people that are wagering on the race. You're not betting against the house. Let's look at what so-called historic horse racing is. In historic horse racing, the patron is playing a slot machine, basically. There's a random number generator in the machine that picks some race that occurred in the past at random. Then that individual patron will not be able to know the name of the horse, the name of the jockey. They won't know anything other than the fixed odds at the time that race was run when the betting was closed at that time. It was a pari-mutuel race probably in the past because there were individual bettors who were betting on that race against each other. And then when the bets were closed, those odds were fixed. But there's no dynamic handicapping of these on these machines. At any given time on these machines, and you've all received materials that have pictures of what these machines look like. They're a slot machine, glorified slot machine. You might only have one patron betting on a particular race at a particular time. There could be 10 people playing these machines right next to each other. Those 10 patrons are not betting on the same race at the same time. They're not creating a collective pool, a pari-mutuel pool that they're all betting against each other for. What they're doing is they're betting against fixed odds, and they're betting against the odds that were set by the house. This legislation, unlike pari-mutuel, which allows the bettors to bet against each other, patrons to bet each other, there's no guarantee that there's a payout of these prizes because you only have one patron playing at a time on these machines. That patron may pick the wrong horse, okay? And so there is no payout. There's no, unlike a slot machine even, there's no guaranteed payout on these machines. Now let's look at the economic premises for this. The premise was this is going to promote the horse industry. So it's not pari-mutuel betting. It's more like casino betting. It is casino betting. It doesn't just look like a slot machine. It acts like a slot machine. You're not betting against each other. You're betting against the house. And as we all know, the house always wins. What this is supposedly an economic development program. Let's look at the history of live horse racing at New Kent, right? The premise of this is that you'll get live horse racing days, and those live horse racing days will create a certain number of jobs in New Kent for people who are exercise trainers, stable managers, and so forth. But remember, when you first authorized when the General Assembly first authorized live horse racing in 1988, and that racetrack was opened, the legislation that enabled it said that there'll be at least 15 racing days for the first 5 years, and after the 5th year, you'll go to 150 live racing days a year. And the premise was live racing days in New Kent creates jobs for people in New Kent and revenues for people in New Kent that are involved in the horse racing industry. Now, in those first 3 years that the racetrack was open, they never got to 150. At the peak of racing, there was the peak year for live racing days at New Kent, I believe was 79 days, and I don't have the year right in front of me, but it was 79 days was the peak racing day. Okay, on average, they had about 30 live racing days a year. The peak was 79 days in 2008. They averaged about 30 to 45 days over 9 weeks for the rest of the time that New Kent was open. They never got anywhere near the 150 days that was required, okay? In fact, in the first couple of years, parks in Maryland, Pimlico, Laurel Park, they closed their racetracks down when Colonial Downs was in session, and they brought their horses down from Maryland to race here So they were competing against Virginia thoroughbreds for that limited amount of prize money, okay? The racetracks around the country, there's a reason why there aren't a lot of live race days at Colonial Downs, and there weren't a lot of live race days in Colonial Downs, because racetracks around the United States nationally are offering fewer race days. From 1989 to 2013, the number of live race days is down by 40%. Why is that? Because demand for live racing is going down. So what this is it's an attempt to prop up the racing industry by creating a novel kind of casino gaming that you've never authorized before. And if it were a harmless proposition, then you might say, well, it's harmless. It doesn't matter. This is just harmless gaming. It's adults that are doing this. But let's look at the consequences in ruined lives, in ruined marriages, in ruined careers, and ruined families. Okay, and I'll close with this, Mr. Chairman. 5 to 10 million Americans have serious addiction problems today, nationally, okay? According to Professor John Kent, who's a PhD and works at the University of Illinois on these issues, he says that for every $1 of revenue, for every $1 of that 41.6 million that the Commonwealth of Virginia would receive as revenues for this, for every $1 of revenue generated by gambling, taxpayers pay at least $3 in increased costs for criminal justice services, social welfare expenses, and for the regulatory costs, and for the infrastructure expenditures, okay? Crime goes up. It's a problem whenever you have gambling pervasively. Your own lottery has a gambling addiction website and hotline for the lottery. Okay, child abuse and neglect. There's plenty of evidence that in 2000, a review of Indiana State Gaming Commission records showed that over 14 months, 72 children were found abandoned on casino property just in the state of Indiana. If you pass this law on the premise that you're helping the horse industry, there's no guarantee. The Chamorro Economics Report has as its assumption for these numbers 25 live racing days a year. Now, there may be 1,400 jobs that are generated, but it's only going to be for 25 live racing days a year. So all of the economic advantages that have been held out as the premise for why you want to do this are illusory in nature, but the damages are going to be significant. And what you'll have in New Kent if you do this is you won't have a horse track where there's betting. You'll have a casino where 25 days a year you might see a live horse running around the building. We hope that for these reasons, for all the reasons that we've stated in the past, in opposition to this committee will continue to oppose bringing casino gaming, and will oppose this bill.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in opposition? Okay, present your folks.
Welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. A lot's been said. I'll jump around a little bit with my remarks just to keep them brief. Once again, I'm the executive director of the Virginia Equine Alliance, and I just wanted to point out who the Virginia Equine Alliance is. It's the Virginia Horsemen Benevolent and Protective Association, which is the Horsemen's Association, the Virginia Thoroughbred Association, which is the breeders, the Virginia Harness Horse Association, and the Virginia Gold Cup. The purpose of the Virginia Equine Alliance is to sustain, promote, and expand horse racing and breeding in the Commonwealth. I wanted to point out something that took place recently, which I think is important for our discussion today. The Alliance conducted a racing industry review, which was concluded in December of last year. We went through a number of items that we felt were critical to revitalize the racing industry here in Virginia. And the introduction of historical horse racing was specifically called out as a key component. And I'll just quote a passage from the report. Developing historical horse racing in Virginia is a top priority for generating significant new revenue. If historical horse racing is not developed in Virginia, it is doubtful that Virginia's horse racing industry will ever be competitive with Maryland, Pennsylvania, or Delaware. On the contrary, Virginia's horse racing industry without historical horse racing will remain and also ran. There's a great heritage for racing in Virginia. Secretariat, who we all remember, who won the Kentucky Derby in 1973, then later Sea Hero, who won in 1993, are just two of the great horses that have come out of this state. So revitalizing the industry, bringing back the great breeding program in Virginia is all a part of the benefit of bringing back the racetrack. Historical horse racing has helped a number of states. It's stabilized and helped grow the racing industry in Arkansas, in Kentucky, in Oregon, and Wyoming. So I ask for your consideration of our bill today to bring back a sport that is so much a part of the heritage of Virginia and so important to all of agricultural businesses here in the state. Thank you.
I'm gonna make a pass at the odds again. Are they established based on the minute the original race ran, or are they based on something other than that?
So it's my understanding that the odds are based on the amount of money that was bet when the race was run. So those are the odds that the person has when they're making the bet.
Is that in the legislation?
I don't know, sir, if that specifically is addressed in the legislation. I believe that the Racing Commission will be developing the regulations that will be the parameters for which the historical racing will be operated.
This bill will have to go to finance, so I suggest that between now and when it goes to finance, you work with Patron and Amigo to see if we can't lock down that percentage, what the odds are going to be.
Very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Matthew Smolnick. I'm the Director of Economic Development for New Kent County, and I'm here to talk in favor of House Bill 1609. So New Kent County, who are we? We are a rural locality that's experienced a 17.8% growth rate over the last 7 years. This is per the recent Weldon Cooper numbers. Now that puts us second fastest growing in the Commonwealth. With this staggering growth rate comes immense growing pains. We're in the process of budgeting and designing our third elementary school at a cost of $30 million. We've recently received a draft permit from DEQ for a water withdrawal permit. Treatment facilities estimated $40 million. And we're in the process of building our fifth fire station to keep up with the growing demand for our population and the increased traffic on I-64 at the cost of $3 to $4 million. So the big question is, how do we pay for all of this? At its peak, Colonial Downs generated approximately $750,000 worth of revenue for New Kent County. It supported hundreds of jobs at the facility, hundreds more at the ancillary businesses such as farmers, restaurants, and gas stations. And it was a draw for our other tourism-related businesses, our wineries, our golf, and our history. And lastly, this is part of our identity. You look at our logo, first and foremost, as a horse head. Colonial Downs is part of New Kent, and we want our identity back. So House Bill 1609 is vital to our local economy. It will create hundreds of jobs at this facility and bring hundreds more at the businesses that follow. The new businesses that would come in the way of hotels, restaurants, gas stations, and retail establishments. And those businesses who have weathered the storm over the last 3 to 4 years would see a revitalization in their business and allow them to prosper once again. So this is a game changer for New Kent County and for the Commonwealth of Virginia. It will impact how local and state economics are done for years to come. And we need to take advantage of this world-class facility here in our own backyard. And with that, New Kent County fully supports House Bill 1609. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Support?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black.
Just a comment. I have always voted against gambling bills, but like the gentlelady from Fauquier, we're sort of in the heart of horse country, and we, between Loudoun County, Fauquier, and some of the areas right around there, we raise really the finest horses in the country, and it has troubled me. I used to go out to Morven Park, and we had very nice. They're relatively small races, but they're very nice, and they couldn't make it, and my concern is not so much with the overall economic development, but what happens to our equine industry and the impact that it's going to have on the breeding and raising of horses if we do not pass the bill. And so I guess for the first time ever, I'm going to make an exception, and I'm going to support this bill. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. My name is D.G. Van Cleef. I have the pleasure at the moment of serving as chairman of the Virginia Racing Commission. Our mission, if you read the enabling legislation that created the commission originally, is number one, to make sure that we assure the public here in the Commonwealth of the integrity of our sport and the wagering on it. Also, it charges us as a commission with a responsibility for doing what we can to grow our native horse racing and breeding industries. That took us in the past year to ask the Virginia Equine Alliance, as Mr. Hannum just mentioned, to deliver to us a professionally facilitated strategic plan to provide us all with a roadmap for bringing our industry forward from the desert, if you will, after Colonial Downs closed down. As Mr. Hannum already pointed out, that strategic planning process, which was consensus-based and involved the entire industry, brought forth as a first magnitude priority the establishment and enablement of historical horse racing. We feel that will be an absolutely essential revenue generator to the implementation of this plan going forward. That plan was submitted to the commission this past fall at our autumn meeting and received the unanimous and enthusiastic approval of all the commissioners. We understand full well that enabling historic horse racing will do a number of extremely positive things for this Commonwealth and its horse racing and breeding industries. It will put us on a competitive basis with our neighbors, West Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, all of whom have additional revenue sources that support their industries, and it'll put us on a competitive, at least a competitive level field. It'll expand revenues, as has been pointed out, and it will bring additional live racing back to the Commonwealth. There's no question in my mind, having pursued a career in horse racing. I was president of the Breeders' Cup, which is, if you're not familiar with it, the Super Bowl of thoroughbred racing. I served as founding chairman of the National Thoroughbred Racing Association, which is our league office, and as chairman of the oldest thoroughbred and standardbred auction sale.
Thank you for presenting today. I don't want to cut you off, but we
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for your support. We feel this will invigorate our industry and be essential.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone else wish to feel compelled to speak? If not, we want to wrap it up.
Yes, sir. So just in conclusion, I guess the answer to your question is yes, it's the pool, it's the odds at the time, as I understand how historical wagering is going. The other thing that I would like to point out, just in conclusion, in regards to the economic activity that is generated just from Colonial Downs and pari-mutuel wagering in general, there are percentages that go to other entities, as Mr. Hanna had pointed out. And those other entities include harness racing that stretches all the way out to Woodstock. Those include the Virginia Equine Alliance, and those include races such as Gold Cup, Middleburg Spring, and others. So the economic reach is a lot further than people anticipate.
Okay,
thank you, sir.
Senator Vogel.
I was just going to commend the patron on a lot of hard work that he's put into this, and I would just say for my little part, I feel somewhat responsible for what's happened in New Kent County and the situation that they find themselves in, because I was part of the work on the Equine Alliance and very, very much want New Kent County to succeed. And most of all, I want racing back in Virginia. And it just kills me that something that was so much a part of the history of Virginia, so much a part of Virginia's heritage, and especially to echo the comments of Senator Black, something that's meant so much in Loudoun County and the region of Virginia that we represent, it's not there anymore. And that money and that industry and those people are going to Maryland and to Kentucky and to Pennsylvania, and that money is leaving Virginia. And the people who made money in the equine industry as veterinarians and all of the allied industries that support that and have been supported for generations are no longer surviving in Virginia. And so I am desperate for this bill to pass and hope that my colleagues will support it, and appreciate Delegate Weber for hanging in and for all the people who've worked on this for such a long time. And I know Senator Black, I think, wanted to say something.
Mr. Chairman, for the reasons mentioned and those that I earlier articulated, I've moved that we report the bill.
right, the proper motion would be to report and re-refer to finance. Is that your motion?
Yes, that is my motion.
Properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. Bill is reported 13-1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Delegate Landis.
Mr. Chairman, I have House Bill 760.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 760 deals with basically requires that any public body that to accomplish a procurement through a written informal solicitation of a minimum of three, it would require a minimum of 3 bidders or offerers, if practicable. That was language that was added in the general law subcommittee, and then the full committee accepted that on the House side, to include written statement regarding the basis for awarding the contract when purchasing Virginia-grown food products under the current exemption from the Virginia Public Procurement Act for the purchase of Virginia-grown food products for use by the public body. In most cases, it's going to be public schools. But that this would only be done where the annual cost of the product is not expected to exceed $100,000. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the reason you have this bill before you is because of a turkey that was purchased by one of the local school systems that I have. They actually, and it was brought to my attention by a constituent, there was a local public school who was going and accessing Virginia-grown food products, and in this case, turkey. And they were doing this around the Thanksgiving holiday. Well, they were purchasing turkeys for $85 a piece. And unfortunately, there are many Virginia producers that can even produce organically grown turkeys for much less. So what we're trying to get at here is just to limit and make sure that there's a little bit more transparency and reality, if you will, with public bodies in looking at this and making sure we're not spending more than we need to. So that's what the bill is attempting to correct. And I know there were some concerns by the procurement folks, but that's what, if practicable, was added to make sure that there may hopefully be enough bidders, at least 3 bidders. And if practicable, I think makes it clear that if there aren't, if they can't access, then they can use fewer numbers to actually look at in purchasing the Virginia-grown products. So that's why we have the bill here, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 760? Hearing none, if the
Chairman,
proper motion would be to...
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to slow down the bus here.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question, sir?
Sure.
So we have a local farm that has, and I don't know if they have a contract or not, but they provide farm, fruits, vegetables, whatnot, to the schools. Would this require the schools to bid to 3 different farmers, or, I know you said if practical.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Mason, I would say that would be the intent. But again, if, for instance, in your locality, there's only 2 people that produce, or 2 farms that produce produce in that case, then they would just look at those 2. The purpose is to at least have some written information and to really make the attempt. That was the problem in this case. They basically just went to one source and they didn't even try to seek other sources for that product.
Thank you, sir.
Does that complete your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The proper motion would be to report and re-refer to finance.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. Vogel. Did she leave a proxy? She didn't leave a proxy. Don't do that. It should be recorded 14-0. Senator Vogel's button was pushed by accident.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 26 provides that a pawnbroker may charge a late fee not to exceed 10% of the amount loaned for each item that's not claimed by the pledge due date, as long as the pawner is notified of the fee on the pawning ticket at the time of the transaction.
I'm sorry.
You want me to repeat that?
No, I want to see if there's any opposition to House Bill 26. Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 26 be reported. Any discussion? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one is reported 14 to 1. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
House Bill 1124. Welcome. All right, first of all, let me apologize. I had the wrong Joneses. I was looking for Chris.
The other one.
The other one. That's all right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1124 has two technical fixes to the part of the code that relate to the Advisory Board on Service and Volunteerism. And what it does is it removes the sunset clause and it changes the board's term limits from 4 to 3 years, which puts it in alignment with the funding requirements under federal law.
Is this bill the same bill that Senator Wexton had?
I don't believe so. Yeah.
Amigo, can you explain the difference in those two bills? Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Senator Black.
question. We've got an advisory board on service and volunteerism, and we must have 100,000 volunteer organizations and churches, and just recently there was a real problem with our homeless shelter in Loudoun County because of the severe cold. Their cupboards were bare, and my daughter found out, and the next thing she put it out, and her whole house was full of stuff and $5,000 to boot, and completely redid everything. Somehow, when we set up an advisory board on volunteerism, aren't we really taking away the whole idea of volunteerism and just making it a function of government? And doesn't that just run totally counter to the whole idea of volunteerism and charity and that sort of thing?
This is a board that kind of acts as a middleman to help kind of more efficiently get volunteers to problems. So what they do is they get federal money and they match that with private monies, kind of public-private match. And what they do is they kind of organize volunteers. And so we're talking about supporting veterans and military families, mentoring children, restoring the environment. And so what this is kind of a middleman body, if you will, that helps make volunteering more efficient and get to the places where there are problems.
Mr. Chairman, one follow-up.
Continue.
But you're talking about getting federal money and state money and all of this other government money. And again, how is that volunteerism if the federal government is taxing people and saying, we bring the police power of the state behind this, and you will provide this? Where is the volunteerism? Volunteers, when I, we support several people who are in difficult straits, and the government's never come in and said, you will do this and you will provide so much, but we, volunteerism to me, I don't understand where government gets into volunteerism, and that, I don't know, maybe you could explain
Chair?
how that is volunteerism.
Mr. Chair.
Just a moment, just a moment. Did Jack complete your?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Who was? Senator Bartlett.
At least in my part of the Commonwealth, we local governments have similar types of things that are already operating. And one of the main things they're doing, two things they're doing. One is try to recruit people to volunteer.
Correct.
And the second is get them matched up with the nonprofit agencies and the organizations that are providing the services, so that someone gets a list if they want to try to address the homeless and hungry and those types of things. They get organizations that are doing that, and so that it's a much better, it's an efficient way to get people matched up, as well as recruiting people into the process. And this is an existing board; it's just making changes to that. So,
Correct.
And the problem with 3 years?
The 4 to 3 just puts it in compliance with the federal law that set up the funding mechanisms that the federal money that comes to this board that they then match with private money. So it's a technicality that this board, when it was constituted, didn't have, because we normally set up 4-year boards, but the actual federal law mandates three-year terms.
Any other questions? Anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1124?
second.
Substitute motion, PBI.
Is there a second for that? All right. Record your votes. The motion is to report. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Ayes 8, no 7.
Thank you. Douglas Jones, my apologies. I thought you were the other Jones. I didn't realize.
I don't do that peanut stuff. I'm suffering.
Welcome.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much. House Bill 1367 requires localities to submit their sheltering data annually to the Department of Emergency Management by May 1st. Currently, our budget in line 402B requires the Department of Emergency Management to submit a sheltering report to the governor and to the General Assembly, but there is nothing that compels localities to send the data to the Department of Emergency Management. However, all localities compile this data, so this is just a quick and easy way to align the code with what the budget requests the department to do.
Is there anyone here in opposition to House Bill 1367? Properly moved and seconded that House Bill 1367 be reported. Any further conversation? Hearing none. Record your votes. That one is reported 15-0.
Thank you all for your time. It was lovely to see this procedure work its way out.
I think there was a request to carry one of them, 1041 by for the week. Is that correct? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Welcome. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, we actually had her senator request, he wanted to look at this again, so he requested we take this by for the week so he could address some issues with it.
All right. Is that agreeable with you?
I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know.
It came out of the House 96-2, so I don't think it has much of a fever, but if you can work with your senator, I would. It might be better for future relationships.
Oh, of course. If the senator, yeah, I can go ahead and if that's the recommendation, I would do that.
Okay.
I just didn't know. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for the week, yes. Amigo, we have heard from the suspend for a minute. We've heard. There's some confusion about whether the 1609 was requested. They may have removed their request, but I want the language to be solid that the odds are going to be what the original race was. So we're going to leave it to go before finance, and Amigo's going to look at it in that process and see if we can't not lock it down in the legislation, in the bill. When I receive a letter from finance, I'm expected to send it to finance. So we will not do that. I think that completes our work today. The committee will rise.